PodCastle, episode 733 for Tuesday the 3rd of May 2022. A flash fiction extravaganza on the theme of rough patches. Rated PG-13. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to PodCastle, the flying castle of fantasy fiction. I'm your host, Matt Dovey, and I am delighted to present for your enjoyment a flash fiction extravaganza, with stories by Mariska Pichette, Dafydd McKim, and Devin Miller, narrated, respectively, by Scott Campbell, yours truly, and Kelly Robson. This episode is rated PG-13. So, you remember PodCastle launching properly, for real, no longer a joke but a real podcast this time? Its second episode comes out this week for Patreon subscribers at the premium content level or above. Every other episode will be launched publicly, so everyone got April's, and will get June's too, and then August's, but patrons at the appropriate level get twice the feline fantasies of fantasy and fun. If you're already an Escape Artist patron, and firstly, oh my god, thank you. Secondly, go check your premium RSS feed. You'll have new content there as of the 1st if you're an early access patron or above, or on the 4th if you're a premium content patron. And if you're not yet a patron, but you like what we do here, while our sisters do at Escape Pod, Pseudopod and Cast of Wonders, and you fancy more clever chronicles of cunning cats from Catscast, head to patreon.com/EAPodcasts to sign up and start getting new exclusive content, including merchandise like mugs and stickers, and a beautiful bounty of other benefits, including, of course, those extra Catscast episodes. To the stories. This week we have a selection of 3 flash stories for you, united by a theme of rough patches. To quote your co-editors Eleanor and Shingai, we collated these stories as they all feature romantic relationships gone awry, be it through happenstance, illness or communication breakdown. They also all feature somewhat ambiguous endings, finishing on notes of hope, but without anything magically solved. Your first story today is Water We Made to Breathe, a PodCastle original written for you by Mariska Pichette and narrated by Scott Campbell. Mariska Pichette is an author of speculative fiction, non-fiction and poetry. Further work by her has been published and is forthcoming in Strange Horizons, Pseudopod, Daily Science Fiction, Fireside, Uncharted and PodCastle, among others. A lover of moss and monsters, she lives in Western Massachusetts. Scott Campbell searches for battles that will increase his skills for the battles to come. The slush pile underneath Pseudopod Towers is a worthy opponent. He also writes, directs and performs for the queer, in every sense of the word, cabaret, the Mickey Faust Club. He also writes, far too infrequently, at the official online home of the Sleep Deprivation Institute and pop culture website, needcoffee.com. He lives in Florida with absolutely no pets and can be found on Twitter at Scottums. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin. You'll have to live with the regret if you don't commit to it.
Water We Made to Breathe by Mariska Pichette. Read to you by Scott Campbell. When we were 14, we went looking for the ocean at the heart of the woods. I remember the smell, earth and algae and damp, air thick as water. Our sweat mixing with the summer sun, our clothes in a pile on the shore. Max jumped in, his shoulders swallowed by green waves. I can never tell Max's parents why I came back alone. 8 years later, I find myself in the woods again. Mosquitoes circle my face and sweat runs down my back. I haven't stopped sweating since we found the pond. Since Max jumped in and didn't climb back out. I sweat, I drool, I cry. Water pours from me in every way it can. Sometimes I think I'm melting, turning into my own pond. An ocean in the middle of the street, seeping into the polyester carpet in my apartment, running between the driver's seat and console in my car. I wonder what will happen then, if I'll evaporate or freeze or fill with algae and water striders. I tried to forget our ocean. I went to therapy, sought the driest places, and watched them dampen with my presence. I sweat in winter and drool in the desert, cry in my sleep. Water, water everywhere, and every drop reminds me of Max. I let the air guide me through the woods, following the mosquitoes into deeper and deeper humidity. Water drips from my fingertips and chin. My clothes are soaked. I stop under a willow and take them off like we did that day, dropping them into a puddle of fabric. I carried Max's clothes back with me after. Did I think he would come back? If he had, he would have had to have walked naked through the trees. I searched the woods for days. The ocean was gone. Max was gone. Mosquitoes thicken around me. Their buzz fills my head, and I realize they haven't bitten me once. Is it sweat or memory that keeps them away? Down between reeds, my feet sink into mud. The mosquitoes abruptly disperse, leaving me naked and dripping, staring at the place I'm unable to forget. In my memory, the pond was small, a little puddle in the middle of the trees. We called it the ocean as a joke. But now I look across an expanse of still green water. There should be trees on the other side. I know there are. The woods go on for miles. Searching for their shapes, all I can see is water. Endless water. Max? The part of me that combed the woods and found nothing, not even a puddle, knows it's ridiculous to think he's still here. Still alive, even. But the rest of me sees his reflection in every raindrop. The rest of me drinks him and cries him and sweats him and dreams him every night. The rest of me is still a boy, confused and in love and naked on the shore, too scared to jump in with him, too scared to make it real. Across the ocean that shouldn't be, a ripple disturbs algae, sends lilies spinning and dragonflies into flight. I swallow as it comes towards me, a single wave with eyes in its center. Before he reaches the shore, Max breaks the surface. Standing knee-deep in his pond, algae wrapped around his arms, snails in his hair. He looks nothing like the 14-year-old boy who jumped in, water snapping shut over him like a toothless maw. His skin is green, mottled brown between his legs. His hair is long and coarse, a black horse's mane. His eyes glimmer elfed red. You're back. His voice is slithery, wet. It is the voice of my dreams, my thoughts, my everything since I left him here. Since he left me for water and green. My mouth is full of saliva. I feel like I'm drowning, and I swallow again. Your parents think you're dead. He blinks. His throat ripples amphibian. You said we jump together. I couldn't. My feet sink deeper into the mud. I know I'm crying. I'm always crying. Max looks at me. A dragonfly passes between us, somersaulting in the air. We made a promise, Eli. I know. Whatever shit there was, we'd face it together. And now? 8 years. 8 years had turned him into this. 8 years had turned me back, driving 6 hours and walking 2 more to get here. 8 years of living that day over and over again, wondering what I should have done, what I should do. Max glistens, his fingers webbed in green. I stare at him, remembering how they used to twine in my hair before I dripped and dripped and dripped. My hair is now short and wet. I wanted to live, I say, water running from my mouth. I wanted to fight this shit and win. You can't hide, become invisible. It doesn't work like that. Insects buzz around us and Max closes his eyes. I'm not hiding. I'm waiting. For what? We searched for you and found nothing, not a drop. I came here 2 more times and you weren't here. This place was gone. I'm shaking now. Water running from me and pooling around my feet. The mud softens, sinking me further. Max walks forward, rising from the pond in green and brown. He stops just before the shore. We were kids. The ocean wasn't deep enough. You would have left. This place follows me. I gasp, moisture filling my lungs. Everywhere I go, everything I do, I want to live and I can't even escape it. People see me and turn away, recoil at my touch. I'm more of a fucking monster than you are. He stares at me with his altered eyes. Then what are you waiting for? Water creeps up over my feet. It's cool, washing the sweat away. Max is there, truly there this time. Not a reflection, never a nightmare. This isn't a hiding place, he says, taking my hand. I find myself wading deeper, algae climbing my shins. It's a future. Waist deep in the ocean we created. I stop choking on myself. When he takes me under, I don't even need to hold my breath.
And welcome back. Mariska said this about her story. This is a story about the desire to escape and how that relates not only to sexuality, but to relationships and commitment. It is a queer story between 2 male identifying characters. Thank you, Mariska. Your next story is Secret Keepers by Davith McKim, narrated by me, and previously published in Flash Fiction Online. Davith McKim is a speculative fiction writer producing mainly short and flash-length stories. His work has appeared in Deep Magic, Daily Science Fiction, Flash Fiction Online, The Best of British Fantasy, and elsewhere. He was born and grew up in Wales, but now lives in Taipei, Taiwan. You can find him online at www.davithmckim.com. I'm your narrator for this story, and, well, you know more about me from listening to me ramble here each week than I could ever possibly get across in a 100-word bio. So, if, for some godforsaken reason, you want to know more, let's just say you can go to mattdovey.com and fill your boots. And now pay attention once more, for this tale is about to begin, and it whispers to you from the rocks beneath your feet. Secret Keepers, written by Davith McKim, read by Matt Dovey. That night, I bring home buckets of rocks plucked from the shore, and spread them across the driftwood table in our dining room. Earth bones, I say, when Joe, my partner, asks what they are. Secret Keepers. I remember reading to her from a book about local history when we first moved to this part of the country, her head on my lap, my fingers entwined in her hair. I recited from the page that when people in the scattering of small villages and hamlets nearby had secrets that were too overwhelming to keep, they would whisper them to the rocks, safe in the knowledge that those silent, grey listeners would guard their darkest passions, their secret shames. Let's open them up, I say, fidgeting like a child on Christmas morning. I imagine them as cockles, ready to be pried open, the delicious meat within quivering, soon to be devoured. Jo rolls her eyes, tells me I'm wasting my time, and that she's going to bed. I wait for her to add that I should come too, a coda which always assured me any bed lacking the other was somehow incomplete. But she has already turned away. I say I'll be up in a bit, and doggedly make my way to the tool shed to fetch a hammer and chisel, while she, quietly sighing, climbs the stairs. We both mumble I love yous, a habit that neither of us has yet dared to kick. I hold one of the rocks in my hand, a giant ostrich egg of dappled black, lay it down, and with a swift motion drive in my chisel, gouging a wound from which words long kept silent might escape. The rock blanches, scarred for life, but nothing emerges. Not a peep, not a whisper. I repeat the act with all the stones, until they resemble a brood of hungry birds, yearning mouths upturned to me, craving a secret I'm not brave enough to speak. I stare at them for a long time. After a while I concede that yes, it's late, put down my tools, and retreat to bed. I find Jo softly snoring, the ridges of her spine and shoulder blades tracing the gentle undulation of the Pennines where we used to walk, it seems, a very long time ago. The us of then would have stayed up all night together, cracking open rocks to hear their secrets, she indulging me perhaps, but enjoying my folly, enjoying me. How long have we been broken beyond repair? How long has she known this truth, but, like me, been unable to admit it? I place my hand lightly on the contours of her bone house. Imagine the rocks within her, imagine their secrets. Wonder how long they will remain silent. A light sleeper, she wakes before me. There is a noise downstairs, something unearthly and yet rooted entirely in earth. The rocks in the dining room are shouting. Together we boulder down the stairs and through the door. Voices like the grinding of millstones clamour to be heard. Long-forgotten diction dancing from quartzites older than the dinosaurs. Moira Green's got a third nipple. I seen it when she was changing and she begged me not to tell no one or else they'll call her a witch. Captain Bright never died at sea. He ran off with a barmaid at the Hind. Poor Doris. It's better she thinks he's dead. My husband didn't drink himself to death. I put arsenic in his coffee and that done him in. He deserved it, the devil. Lucy Baden, good God, I'm in love with Lucy Baden and she's marrying my brother. What do I do? What do I do? The old secrets flow, finally free of their silica cages. Jo looks at me, eyes shining, like she used to when we were adventurous and new. And together we listen to the secrets the rocks spill, laughing at some, gasping at others, wondering if the names we hear are still alive or long dead, now bones of the earth themselves. When the rocks finally quiet, murmuring their last words like the tide retreating over shale, we sit together at the table, eyes lingering, quietly pondering if we, too, can be as open as the rocks. Tell each other how we really feel, what we really want to say. She yawns. I'm going back to bed. It's late. You should come too. I'll be up in a bit, I say. She stands, pushing her chair backwards, and the sound of it scraping on the floor as she rises is like a chisel hitting the rock inside me. My hand shoots to hers, halting her retreat. I open my mouth and speak. And welcome back. Your final story for the day is A Partial Record of Enchanted Cheeses I Fed My Wife by Devin Miller, narrated by Kelly Robson with a content warning for terminal illness. And this, again, is a PodCastle original. Devin Miller is a queer, genderqueer cyborg and lifelong denizen of Seattle with a love of muddy beaches to show for it. Their short fiction has appeared in Beneath Ceaseless Skies, and their poetry can be found in Mermaids Monthly and on select King County Metro bus terminals. They have never enchanted cheese, but did once win a science fair by making feta. You can find Devon and their cat on Twitter at DevZMiller, or, for you transatlantic types I suppose, at DevZMiller. Your narrator, Kelly Robson, is a multiple award-winning writer of science fiction, fantasy and horror. Her stoner buddy comedy fantasy, High Time in the Low Parliament, is coming in August 2022. She was also the author of the only novelette we've ever run, Water of Versailles, which ran over 3 parts in late 2018 and is a fantastic use of your time, promise you. And now pay attention again, for our final tale is about to begin, and you need to pay attention to the process.
A Partial Record of Enchanted Cheeses I've Fed My Wife by Devon Miller. Werewolf's Eye. Sheep's milk, rennet, salt, black pepper, moonlight. Peppery mushroom taste. The woman running the deli told me this cheese was enchanted by a local cheesemaker who'd been enchanting cheese for generations. Not sure she was joking. She said it very straight-faced. I picked this cheese because Gwyn's always liked werewolf stories, and she needs cheering up right now. We ate it on almond crackers. We did not turn into werewolves, but we did wake up simultaneously at midnight, both sure we had to go outside. The moon was full. We howled. Not sure if we were joking either. End of the Rainbow. Cow's milk, rennet, salt, roasted red peppers, basil pesto, turmeric. I'm too queer to resist a rainbow cheese, and this tastes like a whole sandwich. The guy running the new Magus Cheeses stand at the farmer's market looked like Gandalf, but with hair and beard neatly braided, presumably to keep it out of the cheese. I figured if anyone enchants cheese, it'd be this guy. He winked at me when I asked. Gwyn and I ate this sliced, and afterwards the sun came out huge and golden. Later I saw a photo someone had taken of a rainbow over our neighborhood, looking like one end was in our roof. No pot of gold to be found, unfortunately. Gwyn's medical bills are starting to pile up. Cinderella's Ashes. Goat's milk, rennet, ash. Semi-soft with a mild sweet flavor. Now that I'm looking, I keep finding cheeses that seem magical. This one came from the fancy import shop near the oncologist's. I was hoping a cheese called Cinderella's Ashes would summon us a fairy godmother. Gwyn needs one. The label says the cheese has 3 layers: evening milk, the leftover curd at the end of a day's cheesemaking, a thin layer of ash, and morning milk. Sounds like casting an enchantment to me. When I got up a few minutes before midnight to use the bathroom, I looked outside and saw our car had become a giant pumpkin with wheels. Right at midnight, there was a quiet pop, and it went back to being a Subaru. I'm pretty sure I wasn't dreaming. Troll Nose Mozzarella. Cow's milk, vegetable rennet, citric acid, salt, hope. Last week I went into a used bookstore while Gwyn was at an appointment and found a book called Cheese Magic. It's about regular home cheese making, but I think the author is only sort of joking about cheese being magic. I also think, look, the Cinderella cheese turned our car into a pumpkin. Why can't I make cheese that will make a real difference to our lives? But I didn't want to start too big. I'm not going to cure cancer via cheese on my first try. Mozzarella looked pretty simple, so I ordered rennet and citric acid and had a go at it. It didn't come out smooth and round like the photos. Gwyn said it looked like a troll's nose, so that's what we dubbed it. I don't know if eating it filled us with hope like I wanted, but it did fill us with mozzarella. Willowbark Jack. Cow's milk, willowbark extract, vegetable rennet, mesophilic starter culture, salt. Willowbark is supposed to be a pain reliever. We ate this cheese on sourdough with tomato jam, and afterward Gwyn got up and started folding all the laundry, so maybe it did have some sort of pain relief effect. But mid-folding, Gwyn's long blonde hair turned into leafy willow branches. So did mine, only browner and slightly shorter. Before we ate this cheese, she thought I was just funneling my stress into cheese-making. I don't think she believed in enchanted cheese. After all, she didn't see the pumpkin car. But secretly, I think she wanted it to be real, because she was delighted by this unintended side effect. I suppose, if nothing else, the enchanted cheese is a good distraction. The effect wore off after an hour, clean and herbal tasting. Zacharias cheddar, cow's milk, 30 years. The cheesemaker couldn't remember what else. I figured a cheese that's been aging for 3 decades probably has some sort of longevity magic in it. Gwyn's meds are killing her appetite, so she wasn't very hungry, but she had a few bites. I guess we'll see whether it worked. Strongest cheddar I've ever had. Rosemary Chev. Goat's milk, starter culture, salt, calcium chloride, rosemary. I brought Chev on our 3rd date picnic. Gwyn had never had it before. I still remember watching her licking cheese crumbs off her thumb and knowing I was going to fall in love with her. She's not doing great. Rosemary is supposed to boost the immune system. It made her smile anyway. Washed thistle cheese. Sheep's milk, thistle rennet, yogurt, Geotrichum candidum, salt, calcium chloride. I started this cheese 6 weeks ago. Gwyn was doing okay then, still sick, but she had the energy to chivvy me out for a walk. She likes to see what's blooming in people's yards. When I told her you could buy rennet extracted from flowers, she made me order some and find a recipe to use it with. This one had to age in a cool room, so I put it in the basement, and every 3 days I went downstairs and washed it in brine. I thought that the more effort and care I put into making this cheese, the more magic I'd be putting into it. Sometimes I even talked to it, telling it stories about Gwyn, how she remembers exactly what we ate on every special occasion, how enthusiastic she is about snow. Gwyn is really, really sick now. If I have any power to enchant a cheese, I have used it on this one. It's sour and creamy. I scooped it out of the rind and spread it on slices of baguette for her. Please let it work. Shepherd's Sunrise, sheep's milk, rennet, mango. I don't know for sure that my thistle cheese made a difference, but it's been 2 weeks since Gwyn ate it, and she's not as sick as she was. It's like the sun has come up inside her after a long night. She has more energy, she's hungrier, in less pain. At our appointment yesterday, Dr. Berman gave us this cheese as a "congrats, you've responded well to treatment" gift. She'd heard about my cheese obsession. It's just normal cheese, but it's nutty and sweet, and we sat on the porch and ate it for breakfast with scones. Maybe what Gwyn's body responded to was medical treatment, and maybe it was cheese, but regardless, I'm ordering more rennet and a cheese press. I'm going to keep getting better at enchanting cheese, just in case it helps.
And welcome back. Devon sent us this about their story. I've made cheese before, once won a science fair with it, and I've always thought it's basically dairy alchemy. But the seed for this story was a prompt title, Enchanted Cheeses of Europe. Europe fell out during the writing process. Although the narrator's gender is never explicit, the relationship is intended to be a queer one, from my perspective as a queer author. Cheese making is a love language that would fit right into my queer relationships. Thank you, Evan. And that, dear listeners, is our triptych of tales. To my mind, all 3 are, in some way, about the difficulty of bridging a gap, even between the closest of us. A gap in courage, a gap in communication, a gap in care. There is so much in this world that seeks to put us apart from each other, to divide and conquer, to leave us alone and afraid. For all the fantasy we publish, I think the greatest magic in the world is that we ever forge bonds between us, of love or friendship or camaraderie. The universe is a large and largely terrifying place of incomprehensible scale. The brain, a rich and wondrous mesh of thought and experience and memory. We have such limited tools at our disposal to connect with each other and share that individual experience of the sublime. And yet we try so doggedly to make that connection. That's what stories are too, I think, a way to reach out and find each other and create threads between us. That ability, that urge to connect, is a magic we've all got. Treasure it. That was our show for this week. On behalf of everyone at PodCastle, your co-editors Shingai and Jerry Kagunda and Eleanor R. Wood, your assistant editor Sophia Barker and audio engineer Peter Adrian Berefesh, forum moderator Ossicat, and our many wonderful first readers Tierney Bailey, Aidan Doyle, Amelia Harrington, Kai Hudson, Craig Jackson, Devon Martin, Julia Patt, Hamilton Perez, Shri Kripet Krishna Prasad, Zeev Wheaties and Caitlin Zavanovich, and myself, Matt Dovey. Thank you for letting us share another story with you. The legal bit. PodCastle is part of Escape Artists Incorporated, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can share it, and please do, but you cannot sell it and you cannot change it. If you want specifics, check creativecommons.org. Our music is by Shiva in Exile. Everything we do on PodCastle is 100% donor funded, and if you'd like to support what we and the rest of Escape Artists do, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/EAPodcasts. Prefer another method? There's details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartist.net. We'll be back next Tuesday with another fantastic tale. In the meantime, you might care to check out our sister podcasts, Escape Pod for science fiction, Pseudopod for horror, and Cast of Wonders for YA speculative fiction. If your heart belongs to us, though, we'll see you next week. Be safe and be kind.